We are trying again with tonight's Instagram Live with Chelsey Brooke Cole. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about the narcissistic discard, and we're really excited to have Chelsey back. We talked in the past about, narcissistic abuse and coercive control, and especially how it affects the kids, among other things. So there you go.
Yay, we got it.
And I can hear you.
It's okay. Tech
Good.
problems, they always happen, but we're good.
Good. I'm glad this time it's working. So this is an anxiously awaited topic.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the narcissistic discard is brutal, so I'm so glad we're talking about it.
I know. And this is like, we always tell our people that our content is driven by our clients. And this is one that definitely is requested often. And we always have a few clients that are dealing with it. We often call them the babies at the beginning of the process, I'll just say. And they cannot understand what is going on. And of course, it makes no sense. And how could someone that they've been with, that they thought they were in love with and that loved them back, behave like this? So Chelsey, you want to introduce yourself briefly again for people who don't already know you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a psychotherapist, speaker, author, coach specializing in narcissistic abuse and helping introverts and empaths thrive. I always say you can only encounter so many narcissists in your life before you realize you have to figure out what's going on and you have to do something about it. So with my work, it was really easy once I've had personal experiences with narcissists and professional ones, and I've worked with people who've, obviously dealt with narcissistic abuse. So now it's my mission, it's my passion to help people understand, learn to heal and thrive from narcissistic abuse and hopefully avoid these relationships altogether.
Yeah, I wish.
I know.
All right. So I know. And I remember the last time we were together, you gave some insane statistic. You want to start with that statistic again and how many people are affected by these monsters?
Yeah, it's amazing. So we often hear about the statistic of narcissistic personality disorder, but narcissists don't have to have a disorder or diagnosis or anything like that to be really, really damaging. So the number of people that just have high narcissistic traits, if they, let's say that's like 1 in 10 people who have narcissistic traits, and they only affect 5 people, you're getting to the tens of millions of Americans or people in the world that are being impacted by these narcissists. So the statistics are amazing, and the more awareness that comes to light about narcissism, we're just seeing more and more that this is affecting so many people. We're just now really talking about it.
Yeah, I know. And there's certain celebrities to thank for that. That we don't need to get into.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
all
very
right.
common to see that.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't you define what is the narcissistic discard?
Yeah. So the narcissistic discard is really typically the last stage in the narcissistic cycle of abuse. So you've got, idealize, where you've got the love bombing, when people are just getting in these relationships, like you were sharing, people think they found their soulmate or they found, such an amazing partner. So that's the idealize phase. And then slowly over time, things start to change. The person starts to be, more critical or belittling or manipulative or passive aggressive, or they're not answering calls or texts, or they're constantly putting you down. You're starting to question yourself and question the relationship, but you still think they're this person I met. They're a really great person. We're just going through a rough patch. They're stressed out at work. Things will get better. And then the discard happens. And oftentimes it happens at the worst possible time. It's when you're sick and you think the narcissist is, of course, going to be there for you. Your partner's going to be there for you when you're sick, or when you are having a struggle with family or work, or some big change happens. That's often when the discard happens, is when you are at least expecting it. But it's usually because the narcissist is just kind of bored with your narcissistic supply. They've become disinterested, or they've found something or someone that they feel is new or better. They're going to be up leveled in some way, and then all of a sudden, this person that you thought you loved and you had built this life with just leaves, and it's absolutely devastating.
Yeah. Now, I thought of something that we hadn't talked about before, but we've realized that a narcissistic discard is much harder than a regular breakup. Why is that?
Uh, so much so, because it's possible for two people in a relationship to just drift apart. It's possible that two people who are, relatively healthy people, but they just realize we have different values. We're going in different directions. We don't want the same things in life. Maybe they've had some difficult conversations or truly have personality differences or communication issues, and they realize, you know, I love this person and it hurts, but we're really just not best for each other. Narcissistic relationships aren't like that at all. The narcissist has blindsided you and sold you this persona of who you think they are. So you think you're getting this person in the beginning. Often if you're dealing with a grandiose narcissist, they seem very charming and charismatic, and that they convince you that they love you. They say that they love you and they care for you, but then at the same time they're slowly belittling you or devaluing you, or putting you down in small critical ways. So by the time you break up with them, the narcissist can have you believing that it's your fault, and if you would have been better or done better or tried more, then they wouldn't have had to leave and their relationship wouldn't have had to end. So it's a crazy making cycle.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember like when I was, I was with my ex for 20 years, and I remember at some point towards the end of the relationship, he had said something like, and here we have two kids together. He said, well, if we ever break up, I'll just get a girlfriend. Like there was nothing, like I was that replaceable. And I didn't, again, I didn't know what a narcissist was. I just felt like, wow, it'd be that easy. And
Yes.
apparently that's how it is with a lot of these people. They just replace you with whoever pays the most attention or gives
Right.
them what
And
they need.
that's exactly what is so devastating, because that is how narcissists view people in relationships. And you don't think that, right? Like you think they say they love you and care about you, so you assume, well, someone who loves me and cares about me wants the best for me. They wouldn't do that. And so when this person says something so nonchalant, we can almost minimize or look over it or make excuses for it or justifications for it for a long time. And until we start to see that, no, that's actually how narcissists treat people. They really use them as commodities and see them as interchangeable. And once you're no longer meeting whatever need that they have, or if you're not giving them enough praise and admiration, or they're just bored, they just leave.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things that I found for myself, and also a lot of our community feels is like accepting that that person never actually loved us, that we really didn't matter that much.
Yes, it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and some people find that it's more, more comforting to think that, well, the narcissist loved me in the way that they could. I tend to encourage radical acceptance, as I find that that's an easier and better way to process through the grief. We have to acknowledge it for what it is. I always tell people, you get to define what love means to you. For me, someone who belittles you, criticizes you, but then says they want the best for you, that's not love. So I think we really have to come to terms with, you know, the narcissist is just doing what they're doing. They're calling it love, but that's really not healthy love.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so what's the difference between like the devaluing and then the actual discard?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, because not all discards necessarily end with the narcissist leaving or breaking up. A discard can also be they're stonewalling you, they're giving you the silent treatment, they're ghosting you, or maybe they're in the relationship but they're actively cheating on you. So basically, there's no relationship left. They've found
Hmm.
a new supply, but they're physically present. The devaluing part is really the emotional and psychological abuse. So that's the manipulation, the gaslighting, the lying, the denying your reality, the passive aggressiveness. That's all of those things. So it's an interesting distinction, because devaluing doesn't always, or discarding doesn't always mean that they actually leave. They can actually stay in the relationship, but basically essentially be done with you and no longer using you as a supply, which can also just feel miserable.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. I never thought of it that you could be discarded but still be in the relationship, or think that you're in the relationship when they are done with you. But that makes a lot of sense, because we know that so often they want to keep, their appearance. Like we tell a lot of our clients that, when divorce or separation happens, it's very hard for someone like that because they feel abandoned, and then it turns into rage and they're angry at you for destroying their beautiful home and their beautiful life and family. So what you're saying is they can discard you, where they keep that power and control. They keep all of the stuff and the appearances, but they've gone on to live their own life.
Yeah, it can be a kind of scary, unsettling thing. I know I've had some clients who the narcissistic partner basically was done with their relationship. Like they were discarding their partner, but they were actively cheating and basically saying, "No, I'm not going to stop. Like this is how the relationship's going to be." And to see that mask come off in that way, because when a narcissist is ready to discard you, they don't really care what you see because they're done with you. So they no
Mm-hmm.
longer need to have that manipulation and control over you. So they might actually admit some lies and admit to cheating and admit some truth. And you kind of feels a little psychopathic when that happens. You wonder, like, who am I living with in this house? Like, it's very
Oh yeah.
unsettling.
Yeah. Conversations like this bring back a lot of memories. And I think
Yeah.
also for them to acknowledge, like, this is what I'm doing, too bad.
Yep.
They never expect a victim to say, you know what, I'm done. Because it's pretty shocking to them when they've discarded, but then you actually make the move and physically either get them out or get yourself out. It seems
Yeah.
like that's a big shock for many people like that.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing is usually narcissists don't discard you, or they don't get to that point until they already have a new supply. So they've
Hmm.
already invested in someone else. They're already putting someone else through the idealize or the love bombing phase. So by the time that you find out and you realize that you're being discarded, they already have, a new life, a new partner, a new fantasy world that's going to be so amazing without you. So it's very disorienting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to say, besides that, after a discard, what usually happens? Like, so they have new supply, but what other things should people expect in crazy world?
Right. Well, a lot of people, a term that a lot of people might be familiar with is hoovering. And it's funny because
Mhm.
that doesn't always happen after a narcissistic discard. So it's not a guarantee that just because someone discards you that they will hoover you. It really honestly depends on the narcissist and how things are going in their world, as everything does. So if, they have a new narcissistic supply and everything seems to be going great for them, then they may, continue to go on and not hoover you at all. It's also possible that as soon as you start healing, so let's say that you've decided to block the narcissist, you're moving on, you're finally like getting back to yourself and feeling good again. That's often when the narcissist will come back and try to hoover you. So it's very important to be aware of that kind of love bombing 2.0 kind of feel. It's not uncommon for a narcissist to come back and try to pull you back in, because that's just another win in their mind.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you define Hoover? Because some people don't know. I mean, I think a lot of our people do, but you said it sort of, and I know. Go ahead.
Yes,
It
yeah,
comes
for sure.
from
So
British English.
hoovering, yeah. So you've got to give you the whole narcissistic cycle of abuse. You've got the idealize, the love bomb, the devalue, the discard, and the hoover. And that will often lead back to the idealize if the person goes back into the relationship. So hoovering is basically this concept that you get hoovered or sucked back into the relationship. So the narcissist has discarded you. Let's say you've ended the relationship, you've separated, but then they text you and they say, "I didn't know what I was missing. You are amazing. I need you back in my life. I didn't know what I had lost." They say everything that you ever wanted to say. They realize everything you ever told them in the relationship. Now they understand and they're ready to, try 100% and meet all of your needs. So they often say those things, that's the Hoover. That's trying to get you back in so they can start the devaluing process again.
Okay, so speaking of hoovering, someone had asked, and this is an interesting concept of the smear campaign. Can you talk a little bit about a smear campaign and how some people use it to hoover in positive and negative ways?
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. So the smear campaign usually happens during or right after the discard for sure. So the smear campaign is all about the narcissist going around telling sometimes your friends and family what a terrible person you are. They have their narrative about what happened in the relationship, and often it's a complete projection of what they've actually done. So if they have been, belittling, obviously, and criticizing, or they cheated during the relationship, or all the lies and all the terrible things that they did within the relationship, they often, you know, go around telling everyone that that's actually what you did. So they're almost gathering people to be on their side. And sometimes they're doing this behind your back the whole time in the relationship and you don't even know it. And it doesn't come out until after the discard. And in that way, they do trigger you or hoover you back in through the smear campaign, by saying all these things, because obviously you want to defend yourself or you want to go to those people and say, that's not what happened. You know, this is what happened. And then the narcissist, in a way, has reeled you back in.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And then is there anything like to know if a discard is coming? I mean, I feel like in my own relationship, in those last couple of years, my ex did all these terrible things. And I think he sensed that I was pulling away and I was making an exit plan. And then he started saying, well, you're so bitter and you can't let the past stay in the past. And, you know, you're not willing to just forgive and forget. So I don't know if I want to be with you anymore. And I was like, wait, what? Like, you're the one who did. So it was very disorienting. So what are some ways that people can tell that a discard might be coming?
Yeah, that's a great example. That's exactly what they do. You know, number one, if you're healing, if you're starting to sense what's happening, and the narcissist often knows. They're really pretty good actually at reading people and being able to tell whether you are less manipulatable, basically. They will kind of get disinterested at that point, and that can be a sign. If they start to you know, not come home or not respond to your texts or phone calls, you slowly have a harder time getting in touch with them. They change their schedule. All of a sudden they have to work late when they've never had to work late, or they have to travel now and they've never had to travel, or they start ghosting you. I've had clients where their partners just disappear for a day or two and they don't know what's happened. They don't even know if they're alive, if they're okay, like, and the narcissistic partner then comes back in like nothing has happened. They start blaming you, like you said, for everything in their relationship. Like everything is your fault. The devaluing tends to get worse. So they'll increase the criticisms and the belittling and the guilt tripping and the blaming you, so that when they do discard, you're so disoriented, you might think maybe this was my fault. And that's like their ultimate win, because then they've left, you decided that this relationship was your fault. You won't even fight the smear campaign, and they're off in the sunset with their new narcissistic supply.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. I'm gonna insta bomb. Hi, Chelsey. I've been off camera getting our dinner together and listening, and oh my gosh, everything you guys are describing is exactly what happened in my situation. Like the last couple of years, the schedule changed, staying out late. I found out later there was a new supply involved in that, you know, and just being ignored when she was home and everything. And then, you know, me also blaming myself after she left. And she's the one who left me, thank goodness, because I never would have probably had the strength to do it.
Right.
But I remember those first couple months, like begging her to come back, and I was still being wrapped around, I guess, my own brain, just like crazy. But this is so spot on, and hopefully all of our viewers can relate to it as well. So, bomb over.
Yes, he is getting dinner ready. He's the cook in the relationship. I was going to say also, Chelsey, a couple of things. So I know some behaviors that I noticed in my relationship where my ex suddenly started working out. He was not in shape for the majority of the relationship, but he was going to work out all the time, this like concern with his appearance. And I'm like, wait, what, you know, I knew something was up. And getting new clothes, like being very, very concerned with his looks, which
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or being super secretive now of like past.
Oh, that was always
yeah, I've had people tell me, oh, my iPhone, it makes me change my password like every 2 weeks. You know, I have to. Or, you know, you've had access to something and now all of a sudden you're locked out of things. So yeah, all those subtle changes. And that's why it's so important to trust your gut in these relationships, because you know, like your body knows these things are happening. Narcissist tries to get you to ignore that so that they can manipulate you more. But it just goes to show that we know so much more than we realize.
Right. And what you just, I have two thoughts, but what you just said about trusting your gut, I think that's the thing that, that harms us the most in some ways, is after after getting out of these relationships, we feel like we can't trust ourselves anymore. And I feel like
Right.
you, at least for me in those last, I mean, it took, like I said, it took a couple of years to really extract myself. But there was a point where every single weekend I was finding out new awful information. And so that complex PTSD, where the part of the brain, the amygdala, that's this protective sheath, it just kept like wearing down. And so I got to the point where I couldn't trust my instincts at all, because every time I'd start calming down, it was like I'd just be in like a constant state of panic, waiting for the next bomb to drop, knowing that every time he said, now you know everything, now you've uncovered it, then another week there'd be more to discover. And it was horrific. And I kept saying, like, can't you just tell the truth? Like, it's already over. Like, just come clean. And he's like, I am. And then there was more and more and more and more. It just made things so much worse.
Yeah, and that's why it's so difficult. You never get the closure. And you think that the narcissistic discard is terrible, which it is. And a lot of people think, if I just could have a conversation with them, and that in and of itself can lead back to a Hoover of, I'm just going to have one more conversation with them. We're just going to resolve everything. We're going to get it out there. Like, don't Hoover yourself. Don't go back and think, I'll be able to get closure. This will be resolved. We'll be able to end peacefully. It never will.
Yeah, that's interesting. That self-hoovering makes me think about gaslighting and self-gaslighting. We've been gaslit for so long that we start doubting ourselves and questioning everything too. And then we also got I just saw like some of the comments flying by about breadcrumbing. So there's ghosting and then there's breadcrumbing. Can you talk about breadcrumbing at all?
Yeah, for sure. So of course, ghosting is they disappear if you don't know where they are. The breadcrumbing is really they give you just enough to survive or like to stay on the relationship. So you think of breadcrumbing like it's just enough to get by. You're never quite satisfied in the relationship, but they give you just enough. So maybe when you're finally getting ready to leave or you're starting to make sense of things, then they will hit you with, "You look so beautiful today." And it's like that was, oh my goodness, he noticed me. He really does care about me. Like, we're okay. And then you start. So they condition you to live off of less and less, so that by the end of the relationship, if they've texted you good morning, you think you're off to a great day. You start to forget what it's even like to be treated like a normal, healthy human in a relationship, because they've slowly devalued you so much. So the breadcrumbing is like they give you just enough to think you're okay, or to stay in the relationship, to be willing to put up with the relationship, to get you to think that they're going to change and things are going to get better. They feed you that hope, that future faking of, one day we'll have this, and after the job I'll do this. I'm just stressed right now. Let's just wait till after this season. The holidays are hard for me. This anniversary is difficult for me. Let's just get through this. All the future faking, all of that could be tied back to the breadcrumbing that gives you just enough to stay, but never enough to feel really full in a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of the term intermittent reinforcement, which I did a blog about like 2 years ago, but how it's one of the most powerful forms of manipulation in the world, because your brain, it's almost like those pleasure hormones where you get a little tiny bit and you keep thinking, I'll do anything to get that back, just to get a little bit of attention, just to feel good again.
Yep, exactly. And that's why these relationships are so toxic and addictive. Like, I have so many clients who say, I feel addicted to my partner and I don't understand why. And so we have this conversation about intermittent reinforcement. That's why things like gambling can be so addictive. You don't know when you will win or hit the jackpot, but there's a chance. So, slot machines and things like that, they give you just enough. It's kind of basically, an example of breadcrumbing is you get just enough to come back, and then you are willing to put up with less and less, or go longer and longer without any wins, until finally you hit the jackpot. And that is the addictive nature of a narcissistic relationship.
Right. And you're never going to hit the jackpot.
No. There's no winning.
The opposite. You're going to hit bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So say that you're being discarded. Is there anything you can do to protect yourself, or what should you do when you start to realize it?
Yeah. Once you start to see the signs, you start getting that gut reaction that something is up and they're starting to change. It's really important to start preparing. It depends on what type of relationship you're in, but especially if you're in a long-term relationship or a marriage, It's really important to have all the documentation together, know the passwords, know where the money is, have a safety plan if needed, if the relationship is physically abusive, and have a plan of where you might stay, or just start to gather resources. And if you weren't, previously involved in the finances or different things that have to do with the home or the kids, just know where everything is, know the schedule, know the routines, have the documents together. And as far as emotionally, almost start to grieve the relationship. Like, if you start to grieve ahead of time and kind of try to come to acceptance of what's happening as it's happening, that can make the transition a little smoother, so that when the narcissist leaves and discards you, or whatever happens, it's kind of like you already took control of that, so you're a little bit more prepared rather than feeling like you were hit out of nowhere. That's why it's so important to trust your gut. If you see those signs, then trust that that is happening. Go ahead and get emotionally prepared for that, so you feel more in charge of your healing.
Yeah, yeah. As you were saying that, I started thinking about emotional detachment and how it is so much easier to get out of these relationships, and how, like, a lot of our babies, like people at the very beginning, it's so much harder for them, not just because they're at the beginning of the process, but emotionally they're still in that cycle of intermittent reinforcement where they're like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I know, and they take two steps forward and one step back because it's so hard, and then they are much more susceptible to being hoovered and emotionally manipulated. And it's like this constant emotional roller coaster, whereas the people that are a little bit further along have really accepted and seen what their ex is like, and they're like, oh, there is not a chance that we're getting back. And so now I can focus on taking care of myself, my kids, getting through the legal system, and planning without that cloud. It's almost like getting out of a cult, being like, now I know what I have to do. I'm just going to focus on that and move forward.
Absolutely. Radical acceptance is a huge piece, knowing that this isn't your fault. This was never your fault. This isn't something that will ever change. The next person who gets with the narcissist isn't going to get this great version of them that you've, invested 20 years in, and the next partner is going to, have an amazing relationship with the narcissist. They're not. They will continue this cycle. It's best to cut your losses, move forward. The best thing that can happen is honestly the discard, as harsh and as hard as it feels, because getting out of these relationships, if possible, and I know some people have to stay for various reasons, but if it happens, then consider yourself lucky, and move on your healing journey, because you're gonna heal so much better and be so much better without them.
Yeah, and what you just said, I know that's a really, really common theme with so many people, where the ex goes with new supply and they think, well, that they're really happy. Maybe it's me. I wasn't good enough, and all of that self-blame. And they don't just accept, like, this is the cycle. They do this with everybody.
Exactly.
That person is a future abuse victim.
Yeah. You almost want to just go ahead and feel sorry for them on the front end, because they are going to go through exactly what you went through, or worse. So as good as it can look with the new narcissistic supply, you can be sure that they will go through the same cycle.
Right. Okay. So we've gotten a couple of questions, and this is what we came to at the end of our last conversation. What about the kids? What about when the kids get discarded? That's what happened with my kids as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the effect on the kids, I know, can be so challenging. It goes back to all the things, we talked about a lot in our first Instagram live, is all it takes. If they can have one good parent, that can make a world of difference for your child. So you experience the discard, you know what that feels like, you know what you needed. You know that you can't change the narcissist or control the narcissist or necessarily stop it from happening, but you can be there for your kids. You can support them. You can help them process their emotions and give them that safe, supportive space to be able to say, I hear you, I see you. That sounds so difficult. Tell me about it. You want to watch a movie? Do you want to draw about it? Do you want to paint? Do you want to color? Give them some healthy alternatives to know how to express their feelings. If you just be there for them and help them through that, then that's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah. I know. I see there's a comment about when they're taken and brainwashed, but I think they haven't been discarded because they're still being used as supply, right?
Yeah, that's true. And overall, most kids come to see what's happened. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't. But all you can do, even in that scenario, is continue to show up for the kids and be the parent, be the person that you are, because at some point the narcissist, what they're saying about you and who you're being, it's not going to match up. So if the narcissist, that your ex-narcissist keeps saying, your mom or your dad, they're terrible, or they do this, or they're doing this to you, and you keep showing up consistently, and you keep, being a part of their life and caring about the things that they're doing and the things that are important to them, eventually kids can see, okay, dad or mom always says these bad things, but that's not how they actually act. So you just have to continue to be that support for them.
Yeah, yeah, and we know it's really, really hard. All right, so
Mhm.
now what are ways that we and our children can heal after a discard?
Yeah. Well, as we've been talking about, the biggest thing is to know it's not your fault. This was never yours to take blame for this whole process. You didn't know what you were entering into when you entered into a relationship with a narcissist. You thought you were forming a healthy relationship. You didn't know you were entering into playing a game. So you really have to step back and see this cycle, understand narcissism, narcissistic abuse, start to heal those wounds. The biggest thing is the mantra of a narcissistic relationship is we never feel good enough. So starting to do the
Mhm.
deep dive and do the work of allowing yourself to have your feelings, do all the things that the narcissist didn't allow you to do or didn't like you to do. If they didn't like your cooking, if they didn't like the type of movies you watched, if they didn't want to go to the same restaurants, then you go there, you cook for yourself, you go to those restaurants, you watch those movies. Take some of your power back. Notice your strengths. Like I said, allow yourself to feel and have your emotions, and start to do the deeper dive with what drew you into this relationship in the first place. Some of us might have been raised in narcissistic or toxic households. Some of us were empaths, or just, very caring people, but we just didn't have very strong boundaries. So we were kind of sucked into these relationships. Do the deeper dive to also heal any traumas or vulnerabilities or insecurities that you might have had, and, empower yourself so that now you can see a toxic relationship and you know what a healthy relationship is well. So people who've been through it and heal, I often say they're the strongest people because they know that narcissists and toxic people exist. They're not naive to it, and they can identify it. And now they also know what a healthy relationship should feel like as well, and put your energy into developing those healthy relationships and keep the toxic
Yeah,
ones out.
absolutely. So Chelsey, so you're a therapist that specializes in this type of thing. So why not tell people how to find you? But if you can't take them as a client, like what should someone look for in a therapist who really gets this sort of abuse? Because a lot of them don't understand it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still building awareness even in the therapist psychology space of what narcissism is. So it's really important before you decide to go with a therapist or a coach to ask them, what do you specialize in? What do you know about narcissistic abuse? Do you have a background in relationship trauma, or what do you just ask them basic questions about narcissism and see if they can even have a response or an answer to it. Google and YouTube has amazing resources. So a lot of people, a lot of clients are already come very educated. So if that therapist isn't telling you what narcissism is, if they say, narcissism is just someone who's kind of selfish, I would say run the other way. You really need someone who understands what's happening, and they can give you a solid answer for what narcissism looks like, the cycle, how to heal from narcissistic abuse, and go back to listen to your gut. If you don't resonate with people, that's why I always offer a free consult call, because I want people to get to know me first and feel like we're a good fit, answer any questions they have. If you get a weird feeling from a therapist, or you don't click, then you can feel free to move on.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Chelsey, how can people find you? Why don't you end and tell us a little bit about contact information?
Sure. So I'm on all the social media channels. The easiest way would probably be go to the link in my bio on Instagram, and I have a link tree there, and you can see lots of links, or you can always visit my website at chelseybrookcole.com.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you so much, Chelsey, and
Yes,
we'll do
thank you
this
guys so
again.
much. I would love to. It's so awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, talk later.
Bye bye.
Bye.